is the thing, that if you don't have that conversation about, oh, I am capable of doing this,
Hmm.
people who are blind are capable of doing this, then they'll probably always think that somebody who is blind needs help. So that's what my point. So if I'm glad that I was able to tell her that, probably unless somebody's struggling, they probably don't need help. But if I never said that, then, or she never came up to me and asked, and we didn't have that dialogue, she probably wouldn't have corrected her idea, her belief of, blind people being incapable of crossing the road.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. What were some other interesting experiences that you had?
Well, every
So
time we get into Uber, the people.
oh yeah. I have you had a chance to go through my catalog, my episodes?
Not all of them. There was a few that I browsed.
Because months and months ago I put together an episode that the title of it is How to Educate an Uber Driver. Because Uber is such a story. Tell me
Well,
tell me about a story from Uber.
uh,
These I mean you could literally have the sad truth is you could have a career on YouTube just talking about Uber. Now I will tell you before you tell the story, I will also tell you that in the defense of Uber drivers, there have been some crazy passengers that Uber drivers have gotten, and Uber drivers have gotten injured themselves. So it
mhm.
goes both ways. There were some, yeah, there were some really disturbed people who got into lifts and Ubers, and the driver practically didn't even survive the trip. So
And neither did their car.
or something. So tell our listeners more about an Uber experience you had.
Well, my biggest complaint with Uber, well, one of my biggest complaints, I have many.
Let me get let wait. I know the answer before you even
Oh,
I
really? I don't
I
think so.
I there's a rumor, there's a legend in the YouTube community that I'm a mind reader or something. Let me guess. They don't like your guide dog.
No, I don't have a guide dog.
Okay, well then what can possibly be the problem? If you don't have a guide dog for them to complain about, what can possibly be the problem? Okay.
Well, okay. Now, there are many Uber drivers, whether they have children or not, ask me if I would like help attaching the car seat. I'm sorry, but this is one of those things that
Hmm.
I think, especially when my son was pretty young and he wasn't able to walk or, crawl, or, he was a newborn. And so they would ask if I would like help attaching a car seat that they don't even know how to do. I don't know why it is that they ask me.
Hmm.
And,
Well, I think they would ask that. Okay. I think they would ask that because they know that you're in a stranger's car and you don't know how their car is set up or built. So see, that would be a perfectly logical question. It, I mean, it's kind of weird to like get into someone else's car that you aren't used to being in with your own car seat. That's kind of weird to begin with. Understandable and totally okay, but also understandable. And then for them to expect you to know how to use their car, that's kind of strange. I can understand why
it's
I
pretty
would.
standard. I would say it's pretty standard. So, I
Oh,
mean,
okay. All
whether,
right. Well, you know what, and you know what else is the truth about me is that honestly, I'm single and I do not have children, so I wouldn't necessarily know that. I didn't know that feature was standardized with all the different cars. I
yes,
didn't know that.
it's pretty standard. It's you just use the seat belt for all of them, and you just loop the seat belt through. And I mean, the seat belt, you can find the seat belt very very easily. I mean, it's pretty standard on every car.
Hmm.
And like, especially when it's somebody who doesn't even know what a car seat is, or it looks like they don't even know what a child is. Um, uh,
Right. Right.
they asked for me specifically to if I need assistance, and I just don't see how they are able to help. They think they are, but they're not even, they don't even know where to start. And then they
Hmm.
want to, and in some instances, it requires them taking charge of my son to be able to put the car seat in. And I mean, that's just
Hmm.
boggles my mind that they would think that it would be okay for me to give them my newborn son. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not okay, not okay, but I understand why they would be I understand why they would ask, and I understand why they would be confused. The other example that
They
I
all,
can
okay, go ahead.
oh, sorry. No, 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 no worries. The other example about car seats. Now I listened. I watched your video, and I might be confused. But are you from Venezuela?
No, my husband is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay. So the reason I would ask that is because car seats are not always common in other countries. Many Uber drivers, some of them come from overseas. For example, in the part of the country where I was living when I was using Uber, a lot of them came from Ghana, Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
Cameroon, Pakistan, India, the Middle Eastern countries. Now, obviously, it varies from country to country, but car seats are not common in every single country. So perhaps, I don't know, maybe the driver was from a country where they don't use car seats. It sounds strange, but it wouldn't surprise me. I have one brother, you see, Carrie, and he was actually born in Seoul, Korea in 1998, and my parents adopted him when he was a baby. And when he was a really little baby, he wasn't used to traveling in a car seat because in Korea in the 90s they didn't use car seats. They just hold the baby in their lap back
Mm-hmm.
then. So it's not for an Uber driver to be puzzled by it. It's not appropriate, but I can actually in this situation I can understand where the confusion would stem from. Yeah. So when this happens, how do you resolve this issue when it happens?
Well, the first few times I just lost my mind and glared at him quite fiercely and said, absolutely not. But my husband is actually the one who's told me to calm down, and they're just trying to help, quote unquote. And so, it's you just really have to take a breath and just talk to them and say no, that you don't need help, that you're perfectly capable of doing it, whether you're blind or not. And it, just to your point of them not knowing much about car seats, then that I think that that's more reason for them not to offer help, because especially if
True.
they're not
Yeah.
familiar with it, they should not offer it. And also, Uber drivers, sometimes they ask me whether I'm alone or with my family if I need help getting into the car. And I don't know if they ask that to sighted people. I I don't think so, unless they perhaps they're inebriated and they might need some help. But oftentimes they just see my white cane and then they assume, oh, do you need help getting into the car? And that's a time where I think that there's more danger in crossing the road than into getting into a car. I mean, that's where I think that they go too far.
Without doubt, it's extremely dangerous for blind people. I mean, it's extremely dangerous for. I mean, really, when you think about it, Uber is the app itself is safe. I mean, it's a great app to use. It's safe, but the social concept of getting into a stranger's car has always been dangerous. I mean, that's
Hmm.
basically what you're doing. You're trusting a stranger to not hurt you. So Uber's the concept of Uber is a brilliant one, but the issue is that it doesn't the app does not, I guess, alleviate or eliminate the danger that always exists when you get into a stranger's car. I mean, same can be said for taxis. You're
Hmm.
you're trusting a stranger to drive you from point A to B without hurting you along the way. So,
Hmm.
um, So I mean, yeah, that's concerning. I will tell you, and I have in the past. I have written letters. I have documented these types of problems with Uber. I myself have faced immense discrimination from Uber as it relates to guide dogs. A lot of the drivers don't want guide dogs, and I think it's really sad actually because most Uber drivers that I experienced were actually fine with my guide dog. Um, it was just a couple that ruined the experience
Hmm.
for everyone, and that's kind of how it really is in every industry. So I guess it's
Hmm.
but it doesn't make it okay, and it doesn't make it any easier or better. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know some people actually hide before they get, when they call an Uber, if they have a guide dog, they'll have somebody else approach the car, open the door, and then they'll proceed to get into the car when Uber is already there and the door's already open and they can't just drive away.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a problem. That's a strategy that's quite common. Um, and I don't until I mean, I don't think this problem will go away. So I think blind people need to have good strategies for managing that type of thing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And Uber
And
needs to come up with, I don't know, a way to ameliorate the faults of the drivers when it comes to refusing guide dogs.
well, um, I for personal reasons, I keep my location undisclosed. It's a bit of a long story. I don't know what state you're from, but I do know that in the state of California, I believe that there is some sort of a law in California that says that the Uber drivers need to stop being discriminatory, basically, and that in a nutshell, they decided in California that um, when you work for Uber, you are not working for yourself. You're working in a mode of public transportation.
Hmm.
So they've decided it for California. Now
But
that
doesn't
would
that apply to the whole United States, though?
I'm not
What I
so
understand is,
so for this episode. So for listeners, I'm not sure.
okay.
I was under at one point. I was under the impression that they went to some sort of a federal judge in the state of California. I mean,
Mm,
I haven't read the case in a very long time. I would need to refresh my memory, but I think the case was heard by a federal judge at some point. If it was, then it might impact the entire country. It might mean that all Uber drivers have to do that in all 50 states and territories. But the answer is I don't think so, and I don't know. I'm sure there are loopholes.
well,
Yeah.
I would just like to have self-driving cars, and then we wouldn't have to deal with random strangers picking us up and taking us all over the place where we need to go.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that the self-driving cars, I think that's kind of a long ways away. I think we're, at least 10 years away from that. So, until we truly get there, I think that we will have to deal with this problem. The only other thing, just dealing with the topic of Uber, which is always an interesting one, is the concept of ratings and a rating system. Now, I will tell you that I work for Company X, as I like to call it, and at Company X, we have ratings. Students can rate teachers, so I understand the importance of maintaining an appropriate rating. Um, Fortunately, I have been employed by Company X for 5 years. Um, Ratings are critical. The problem that I see that I've heard with Uber is that the Uber drivers can rate the passengers. So they need to develop some sort of a rating algorithm where the driver can't rate the passenger, or something where if you're blind, if there's a different rating, so they would have to create some sort of a different rating system for dealing with that, so that blind people don't get pushed out of Uber and don't get discriminated out of Uber. But I don't think that would ever happen because I think that if you get into a stranger's car, the driver of the car will always have some chance to discriminate against you, and it's very sad and very unfortunate. We're coming up
Yes.
we're coming up on a hard break, as I like to say.